Hi there, my name is Layla Medeiros. I am the CMO at InfoStretch, and I am pleased to welcome you back to DTV, the Digital Transformation Channel, and very excited today to bring you Kim Polese, who is one of the most esteemed entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley and across the nation. Kim, I don't know where to begin in terms of giving you the credibility that you deserve in terms of this introduction. Named Time Magazine's top 25 most influential people. Also named to President Obama's Innovation Advisory Board. One of the people, or amongst the team, or led the team that launched Java in 1995 with Sun Microsystems, and also has a wealth of experience when it comes to artificial intelligence and automation in the early days. So, Kim, I know I brushed upon some of those things. I'd love to see if you could give us a little bit of an introduction of what you're doing now, and also maybe some of the things that you've done in the past that might be of interest.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me on. And I'd say first, I've been so privileged to be part of amazing teams over the last now multiple decades that I've been working in Silicon Valley. And in fact, my first job in Silicon Valley was at the first AI company to go public, and it was a spin out of Stanford. An incredible group of people who've gone on to do amazing things. And then Sun Microsystems was an amazing place to work. Being part of the Java team was just an incredible experience.
And you were on the team that named it Java from Oak.
Oak, right. I was the product manager, and that was my responsibility, among other things, to choose a name for Java, for Oak, rather.
Yeah.
And the reason why we chose Java, by the way, is that it was really all about waking up the web, bringing web pages to life, because up until we basically created the first interactive browser, you could only hyperlink to text. You could only have text in a browser versus an application or a small program running. And so that was the inspiration behind the name. But I am currently, again, part of an amazing team working on something very interesting. I'm chairman of a company called CrowdSmart, and we are bringing basically AI and collective intelligence to seed stage investing to improve success rates for both entrepreneurs and investors.
So you were the founding product manager for Java. How did you get such a wide adoption of that platform across the web development community during that time?
It was really actually an interesting story of how this happened. We were struggling to find a platform to release Java to the world. It was too early for interactive TV. It was too early for handheld computing. There was no viable platform at the time. And basically, at that very moment, Mosaic came along, the first web browser. We downloaded it and realized we could bring interactivity to the browser. And so we rewrote the browser and called it Hot Java, and then convinced Sun's CEO and board to let us give it away for free, full source code, full spec. And
was that McNeely at the
McNeely,
time?
exactly.
Okay,
And Bill Joy was helping us write the spec, and it was incredibly exciting time. But one of the things that really made a difference was getting developers to create applets. So we, before we released it, reached out to all our developer friends and said, "Can you create some applets?" And so we had a spreadsheet that was calculating the value of a portfolio in real time. We had some guys at Lawrence Livermore Labs create an app where you could scan the image of a human body and see MRI slices in real time and imagine how doctors could collaborate across the web. And all of this was just mind-blowing because up till then all you could do was hyperlink to text in a browser. When I think about IntelliCorp, back at IntelliCorp we were using AI to basically create knowledge systems to replicate human knowledge. And we were doing that in a bottom-up way. And so we were trying to replicate, and we were replicating the expert information or knowledge behind a particular domain, whether it was guiding, missile systems or improving factory performance for Boeing or whatever. That was a bottom-up way of basically codifying knowledge. Now we're using the data, basically sort of the exhaust that we all give off every time we use the internet, do a search or whatever. Top-down approach is sort of where we've been focusing, I think, over the last few years with AI, and using data to create, to basically create algorithms that then make decisions. So this bottom-up, top-down approach is now, I think, starting to merge, and
Right.
that's where we're starting to see some of the big breakthroughs happening.
Yeah, and that was one of my questions, is the relevance of data and where you're seeing it the most. Is there a specific aspect of, is it about the analytics and calculating the algorithms that is becoming more front and center, or a relevant piece of the digital equation right now?
Well, that has been the focus, is sucking up all this data and then making decisions based on what, looking backwards at decisions, at actions, at activities that the data then was generated from. That can be, however, problematic. And so I think sometimes we over-rely on algorithms when those algorithms are based on very human and fallible decisions. So, for example, MIT has done, the Media Lab at MIT has done some very interesting work around sentencing guidelines. And it turns out that the algorithms, some of the algorithms that are used to determine sentencing guidelines, are based on decisions that were made that encoded biases against people based on where they live, their zip code, and so forth.
Okay.
And so that's an example of we have these algorithms, but just because it's an algorithm based on looking at data, looking back at data, doesn't mean that it's perfect or even necessarily reliable.
Right.
So I think we're starting to become a little bit more sophisticated about our understanding of AI. There's so much excitement about it.
Yeah.
And having lived through an AI winter, back in the sort of decades ago, everyone had huge faith in AI, and then suddenly it was sort of, well, AI was out of fashion, and now we're seeing that sort of come back, but even more just amplified. And so I think it's healthy to have a skepticism about just how much we should rely on AI and the decisions that are generated by looking back, at just simply data alone.
Right. Switching a little bit back to the organizations that are now, especially some of the larger, more enterprise-grade organizations that are now facing digital, how is the agenda being defined? Is it the back office on the operations side, or is it just based on the front where it's being defined by the customer agenda? Where's the priority being placed in some of the bigger organizations that now have to plug in and adopt?
Right.
And adapt, frankly.
So I think a lot more attention is being focused on customer experience and user experience and sort of the front end. I mean, certainly AI and digital technologies are being applied to both back end and front end.
Right.
But back end has been really a lot of the focus, I think, for many companies. And now they're starting to realize that, how people use the application that they're providing, how they access information is really important. And they need to adopt to how the customer actually wants to receive information or interact with that company versus sort of force one way of doing things.
Right.
And it's a very competitive environment. I think it's a good thing that companies are now being much more aware of the need to create a compelling environment and one that's friendly and accessible and convenient.
Yeah. And in terms of, again, going back to the enterprise, because a lot of the early stage companies that we work with, they're digital first. They sort of get it. They're on a faster path. The case with AI in terms of being enterprise ready, is AI enterprise ready? Are enterprises really getting to the point where they're implementing this as part of their operations and getting results and naming the individuals that need to really be part of this initiative, or is it sort of an early stage process for a lot of them right now? And you being at a company that is solving that problem from an AI perspective, a startup, where do you see that happening?
Right.
Or do you see that happening?
It is still early days for AI and enterprise adoption, no question about that.
Yeah.
And again, I think that we're moving from a sort of the first, in this new era of AI, because there have been several generations previously where businesses have used AI in some forms, as I mentioned earlier. But we're now moving from a phase of really focusing on the data generating the algorithms to being more critical about
so again, it goes back
the algorithms
to the data,
and the human decisions that went into the data. Right. And so, deep learning is part of machine learning, and the whole area around how do we create sort of decision trees. But again, we need to even take a step back further to how did the system make those decisions? And that's where a lot of the focus is now, which I think is good, taking a more critical approach.
Right, so we're on our way.
We are.
What would you suggest to a lot of these organizations that are trying to implement Agile or get on a path to digital as far as suggestions? You were at Sun, big company, you're now at a startup or early stage company. What would you suggest, or any particular?
Yeah, I think first of all, look at best practices. Who out there is really embracing the technology in a way that's responsible, and also using it in very specific ways, not necessarily thinking, okay, I'm just going to apply a layer of AI to everything I do, not understanding what AI really means. And AI is being overused as a term. It's being applied to so much.
ML, AI, AR.
Exactly. So there's a ton of hype around AI, and I think it's important that companies don't get caught up in that, and that they bring in people into the organization that have a deep background. And I know it's difficult to recruit talented people who do have experience, but it's important to not just sort of think you can add some magic AI sauce and transform your organization.
One department the head of that division, which has no experience in that regard as well. Right. Excellent. Well, are there any other topics that you think would be important for some of the companies right now that are embarking on or in the midst of their sort of digital journey, as they say?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And one of the areas that I'm really excited about right now is collective intelligence, and that's a combination of human and machine intelligence in making decisions. And it really is based on the science of diversity, and diversity in every sense. And that means basically, cultural, gender, yes, but also industry experience, role, technical background or business background, whatever it is. Basically, everything that makes up an individual, a unique individual. We're using collective intelligence at CrowdSmart to make better decisions about startup investing. One of the things that we've learned through the science of diversity is we make better decisions when we have more diversity in the inputs that lead into that decision.
Interesting.
And there have been a number of books written about this, a ton of research that's going on to this very day, and a lot of big breakthroughs that are happening. But to me, organizations that really want to be at the forefront of their sector, they should make sure that they're including diversity in every sense, and not just as a checkbox, but in making really critical decisions. Are you getting enough inputs from different sources? Are you talking with the people, not just the management, but the actual individual contributors who might have insights that you just can't possibly have because you're not sitting with a customer.
And you can aggregate that and then into a database and do analytics, and it goes back to the point that you were making earlier, the data.
Exactly. So
and
that's
being intelligent about what you're doing with all the data that you have around you.
That's right.
That you may not have access to, but can from another source.
So that combination of human and machine intelligence is so important, and the diversity in inputs. So that's one of the areas that I think we'll see a lot of really interesting breakthroughs happening.
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and she was a little bit put off about the potential of having a chip in her arm to track where it is that she goes, to then provide some intelligence about some of the basic habits and things that she could do. But that I see that being part of the future, and probably millennials will accept that and will not have a problem with it.
So. That's true. There's a whole new generation growing up very comfortable with digital technology in every element of their lives.
Even inside their bodies.
Inside their bodies, exactly. And so I think companies need to understand that the customer is changing, and also that there are ways of harnessing this technology that maybe they haven't thought of, and including this younger generation in those decisions
Yeah.
is really critical.
Yeah. Well, this was great. Thank you, Kim.
Absolutely,
this was
my pleasure.
extremely helpful for both the bigger companies as you are embarking on your digital journey or in the midst of it, as well as some of the early stage startups, digital first. Some insight from somebody with a wealth of experience in all things digital. Kim, thank you so much for being with
My
us today
pleasure.
on DTV.
My
and
pleasure.
this
Thank you.
concludes our episode of DTV. Thank you, everybody.
I want my DTV!